Massive homeless encampment in Phoenix, Arizona called The Zone was recently put under court order to be cleared out. City said, we need some more time. Court said, no, clear that mother you-know-what out. Clear it out. Well, they did. They got everybody basically to housing or whatever. The folks just went, dispersed as they normally do. And everybody's saying, media is saying, well, look what Phoenix did that other cities are not able to do. And the real issue is, well, we'll get into the real issue. We're actually going to read a New York Times piece that I think is probably more accurate than what you're seeing in a lot of the media, which is, hey, Phoenix did it. Why can't everybody else? Let's get into it. Here we go. So Phoenix, like anywhere else, is, wildly understaffed as far as having beds available and psychiatric services and addiction services for their constituents, for their folks that are on the streets. So when they do these homeless encampment sweeps, they're literally just moving people around. And some people, yes, are going to take a hotel. They're going to take a hotel room because why not? If they're going to have to be pushed out, they know they're going to end up back on the streets. Maybe they buy himself a month in a hotel. Maybe it's a week. Maybe it's 2 weeks. It's whatever the city can kind of rustle up at the time, given how many rooms they have. And this encampment sweep was like 600 people. Big camp. That's why it's called The Zone. Doesn't The Zone sound like something that you're in when, you're working out? I'm in the zone. Don't get me off my thing. I'm in the zone. Playing in a basketball game, just lighting it up, whatever. I'm in the zone. Well, that's the name for Phoenix's biggest homeless encampment. But my thing is, even if you sweep these things out, the people are still the same. They're going to be out there somewhere. They're just going to congregate for a little while at shelter, wherever, tiny homes, whatever the city gives them. And then they'll be right back out there. Right back out there, because the vast majority of them are on drugs, and that's not going to go away. Whether you put them in a tiny home, in a hotel, you move them to a congregate shelter where they've got 200 beds all lying down on the floor, those folks, their addiction still rages. So what are you doing there? Well, we cleared it out. Okay. So you got that one area, the zone area, cleaned up. Now what happens to other areas of your city? Yeah, they go through the exact same process of people moving their tents, and then you got to deal with that. Till you get to the root cause of some of this stuff, ain't happening. You're just moving things around. The city was under a court order to dismantle The Zone, a sprawling downtown homeless encampment, by Saturday. City officials say roughly 80% of the people camping in an area known as The Zone had accepted offers of temporary housing over the past 5 months. So they went after them very hard. And from what I could tell, from what I could see, is you had a fair number of people there that were probably lifelong homeless and weren't necessarily on the hard drugs that we see on the West Coast so often. I would throw that out there. Looking at the folks that were interviewed. Now, vast majority were, your typical crazy stuff going on, but there were some decent examples, and that's everywhere as well, right? You've got people that aren't necessarily whacked out of their mind on drugs or mentally insane. Some just choose to live there. You question that as well. They just can't work it out. They can't figure out how to get back up on their feet, and they just kind of give up. And here I am. The tents and campfires were gone. The sidewalks where people had made makeshift shelters from wood pallets and blue tarps were empty. On Friday, all that was left of The Zone, a sprawling homeless camp in downtown Phoenix, were discarded clothes, trash, and questions about what comes next. So people point to that and say, hey, Phoenix fixed their problem. Their big homeless encampment, it's cleared out. Well, now you've got dozens of little tiny homeless encampments popping up in all other areas of the city, right? So what'd you fix? Well, temporarily you cleaned up The Zone. And from my understanding, what they're doing is they're basically sending police officers to go by on a regular basis and tell anybody hanging out in what used to be The Zone, yep, you can't hang out there. You can't stop and relax. You can't put up a tent. Got to be out. For the first time in years, residents said The Zone felt all but empty cleared out after an Arizona judge declared the area a public nuisance earlier this year and ordered Phoenix to dismantle the encampment by Saturday. Housing advocates say the operation appears to have removed, at least temporarily, a notorious symbol of the homelessness crisis in American cities. You're just playing whack-a-mole. You're just moving people around. Let's not pat ourselves on the back until you start getting some of these, until you start to see the homeless number of folks homeless drop, which I don't think you're going to see in any near future year. I think you're going to see this expand. It seems like some kind of sci-fi movie, said Joel Copeland, whose home and art gallery sit in the heart of the zone. Overnight, they're all gone. He said he often woke to flashing lights of police cars and ambulances responding to fights, shootings, fires, and overdoses outside his bedroom window. Could you imagine? You're there, you've been there for like 30 years. 26 of those have been, pretty event free. Maybe you're not in the greatest area of all in Phoenix. You're in some kind of downtown area. Maybe it's a business you're running. You've been there for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden this element starts to creep in and you're like, this isn't good. Well, that's what all areas say about when they come up close to an encampment, when an encampment starts to encroach on them. Because nobody says, oh, hey, it's so awesome that an encampment's right there in my parking lot. Nobody ever says that, do they? We want to have this fake compassion. Oh, yeah, I mean, we're so tolerant. In the meantime, they're breaking into your store and they're pooping on your sidewalk and running drugs and running prostitution and selling stolen goods and everything that kind of goes collectively with what we know as the homeless encampments. Phoenix began clearing the area in May, going block by block to persuade homeless residents to move into hotel rooms, shelter beds, or other short-term housing. Okay, so you've got virtually no long-term solutions there. Hotel rooms, shelter beds, or other short-term housing. Yeah. And most of these folks wouldn't take it even if they were given it to them because they want to continue their drug lifestyles. And so short-term, yeah, they'll figure out how to get their drugs. What they do is they go out and typically have a tent, post up a tent somewhere outside of the confines of the area of whatever shelter they're in. They'll go there and do their drugs, right? They still got the drug hookup. You just can't do drugs in the shelter. You just can't do drugs in the shelter beds or other short-term housing because it's against the bylaws and they get thrown out. But they do it anyway. You read about drug ODs in these homeless encampments in the short-term housing all the time. About 600 people have left the encampment for temporary housing, the city said, at a cost of about $20 million. Do the math on that. Yeah. How it costs that much. That's insane. But it's government, right? So $18 million toilet, you betcha. You betcha. Phoenix is also opening a $13 million campsite in an empty lot nearby with shaded tent shelters, food, bathrooms, and showers with room for 300 people who do not want to or cannot stay inside. Interesting, right? I just need to be outside. I need to be in my own tent. What are you doing in there? Resting. This was a monumental effort, said Rachel Milne, the director of Phoenix's Office of Homeless Solutions. It's a tremendous difference. Temporarily. Yeah, but it's not a solution. You didn't get anybody off of the drugs. So you just shuffled people around. But housing advocates say it did little to resolve a shortage of affordable housing, mental health care, and addiction treatment, fueling Arizona's broader homelessness problem. And it's everywhere, right? Everywhere is experiencing the same uptick because you got these crazy drugs that are now super cheap, under $1 in many communities, under $1 for a fentanyl pill. Here, under $1. What a bargain. You may or may not die if you take this. Phoenix's shelters are at capacity, and homeless advocacy groups say the city still needs tens of thousands of additional low-income housing units to serve a homeless population that has grown by 70% to more than 9,000 over the past 6 years. You hear about these numbers. Seattle, 7,000. San Francisco, what do they have? How many thousand do they have? It's a ton. California has a third of all the homeless folks in all of the United States, in just California. I mean, yeah. Want that to be your backyard? No, thank you. It didn't end people's homelessness doing the sweep. That's so true. It took them from an unsheltered place to a sheltered place, and that's good. Okay, but it's temporary. But how many more people will fall into homelessness? How many more people are going to get hooked on the drugs? Yeah, a lot, right? Because they're so cheap and they're so addictive. I mean, fentanyl is 50 times more powerful than morphine, or 50 times more powerful than heroin, and 100 times more powerful than morphine. Pretty strong stuff. For now, Priscilla Goodwin said that she was happy enough to escape the tent where she had been sleeping along a stretch of asphalt known as the Jackson Curve. The final section of the zone cleared this week. You know how hot it was in Phoenix last summer? Blazing hot. You want to be in your tent on a stretch of asphalt known as the Jackson Curve? Man, that sounds miserable. Some in the last block had decided to leave before the cleaning crews and outreach workers showed up before dawn, wheeling overflowing shopping carts and roller bags towards parks and alleys that are not subject to the judge's cleanup order. So they just go around the corner and set up. You know, you're getting one area squared away, and then all you're doing is just creating headaches for other areas that weren't impacted before, because the people don't disappear and they don't stay in their temporary housing because it's temporary, right? It's not meant as a long-term solution. But hey, look what Phoenix could do that other communities couldn't. But Mrs. Goodwin, 66, who said that she'd been homeless on and off since she was 14, said she was happy to accept the city's offer to move to a hotel 30 minutes north of downtown. All right, so here's the thing. Miss Goodwin probably isn't a drug addict, because the vast majority of drug addicts that you see interviewed, homeless folks that you see interviewed, one of the reasons they don't want to go outside of their immediate community, they don't know who has the good drugs. They don't know who has the drugs that might kill them. They don't have the ability to buy and sell stolen goods. They don't have the ability to commute in from a hotel 30 minutes north of downtown. So this woman's just going to the hotel and living her life. That would be my total guess as to how that storyline goes. I could be wildly off, but from everything I've read and all the interviews that I've seen, I went down a Slab City rabbit hole this past weekend. Yeah, the Slab City. So many of those folks just whacked out on drugs, and they're just trying to figure out, okay, how do we make this go? I mean, talk about hot. Slab City, desert California, middle of summer. So Slab City goes from, a couple of thousand people, I think, during the winter to like 150 people in the summer, because it is just so brutally hot. And you've got no water, you got no, city water, you've got no power, you've got no official septic sewer system, just off grid, whatever. Slab City, that's some real, they say it's the last unregulated community. It's regulated all right, not by people that you and I would consider to be a real true leader in the sense of the word, right? So I hope this is going to open a door, she said, as she sat in the breakfast room of her hotel. Okay, so that right there is your first clue. I hope this is going to open. She's not saying, hey, I am so happy to be in this temporary housing. She is saying, I hope this opens a door to the next thing in my life where maybe I can get some permanent housing. I can get a real roof over my head that isn't this temporary thing that was meant to be offered as an incentive to get the F out of the zone. So city officials say roughly 80% of the people living in the zone had accepted the offers of temporary housing over the past 5 months because they've been hammering on them. This one area, guaranteed. Other areas in the city haven't had anything done to them. There's no pressure because the city only has finite resources, and they take care of the worst project that they can at one time, or they're forced to. So Mrs. Milne of the Office of Homeless Solutions said most of them were still sheltered, but said some have returned to the streets. That's what's going to happen. They're all going to return to their streets. Vast majority. I shouldn't say all, but I mean, the percentages of people who get off the streets are so low. And oftentimes it's because there's an addiction problem or a mental health problem. We're just not addressing those. We're just trying to put them into housing and go, I hope that works out. The city is not doing any sort of victory lap, Ms. Milne said. Some additional real work has to begin. The encampment sprouted up in a neighborhood where Phoenix's largest homeless shelters and homeless aid organizations are clustered, where hundreds of people still sleep, eat, and get medical care, mail service, and help applying for jobs, housing, or ID cards. On Friday afternoon, a few dozen people seeking a break from the 85-degree afternoon sun crouched on sidewalks beside new signs saying, "This area is closed to camping." "It's dramatically better," said Joe Falaise, whatever his last name is there, the owner of Old Station Sub Shop and one of several local business owners and residents who sued City of Phoenix, arguing that the city had allowed the zone to metastasize into a crime-ridden nightmare by not enforcing rules against loitering, drug use, and camping. So you'll oftentimes see there was a camp in where was that? Spokane, for those in the know. There was a camp in Spokane that was, at the time, I believe it was billed as the largest homeless encampment in all of Washington state. And it was called Camp Hope. Yeah. Still, several hundred people, let's go back to Arizona. Several hundred people said that the cleanup had gone beyond clearing away the tents and tarps. With the area cleared, they said the police were no longer allowing them to sit or stand on the sidewalks. That's what you have to do to keep these folks from setting up. Because the minute you let them set up, boom, it'll just explode like wildfire. Just, I see it happen in Seattle all the time. Area will get cleaned. They'll fence it. They'll put razor wire around it. That area looks like just a prison gone sideways, right? Because you still got all the trash and stuff around. And then just a few, literally feet away, people bring their tents. Hey, they cleared this. This is the best spot to be in because they won't be back for a while because they're going and, clearing out all those other areas that were being ignored when they cleared out the area right there. So still several hundred. Okay. So a 46-year-old man who gave his name as BJ said he had moved off the streets and into a shelter bed, but said that the fenced off campus, it's because they fence them in, got claustrophobic and chaotic after a while, and he sometimes needed to leave. People have massive head trauma. They've got all kinds of psychoses and crazy stuff going on, and they can't be in what's essentially a homeless, prison camp. There's zero freedom in there, and there's not meant to be, because you got to run a super tight ship when you are dealing with people who have mental issues, substance abuse issues, and oftentimes have criminal backgrounds, and they're not afraid to scrap. So, there's this fine line between running a tight camp and, letting it get out of control. They say we don't have no rights to walk around here anymore, he said. Yeah, there's probably some safety issues as to why they said that. As he and three friends stood on the corner, a police cruiser rolled past them. "No more hanging out here," an officer said through a loudspeaker. "You got to move along." That's what it'll take. And so when you've got the police in one area, guess what? Other areas are being overrun with the homeless. That's just how this goes. So until you get to that bottom of start to actually deal with, well, why do we have so many people whacked out on drugs on our streets, living in tents in these liberal bastions of social utopia? Why is that? Well, because we've let it happen. We've coddled these folks to allow them to be able to do this. You get a few $100 a month and you do some other kind of side hustle. Everybody's hustling, meaning stealing, or the ladies can sell their bodies, quite comfortably and make, get enough money together to get their next fix, whatever it is that they need. Just that whole ecosystem that goes on. Clearing out one encampment, what does that really do? It just clears out that one encampment. makes the people near that one encampment happy because they've probably been just pooped on for, the longest amount of time. And then now the city will move on to the next the zone, right? That's how it typically goes. And oftentimes when something is towards the end of being cleared out, what you will read several instances of criminal activity that makes the media, that makes the news. And then all of a sudden, boom, gone. It's cleared out. The mayor gets an emergency proclamation and, can just go in there and just take care of it. I wish they could do that all the time, but they just can't. They don't have the ability to, nor do we have the political will to. Let's go down. Let's switch gears and let's talk about Portland, Oregon. They've got a homeless ban, tent camping ban that's, supposed to be enforceable. But will it be? It's my understanding that virtually nothing will change on the homeless front as far as, okay, yeah, you're in front of a school, you're in front of a business. They got all this criteria where they basically set up ordinances stating, hey, between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., you cannot camp here. But it's my understanding that there aren't going to be any arrests. They're not going to prosecute anybody for living in tents, violating these ordinances. They're not going to fine anybody. It's a misdemeanor, I believe. And so they could fine you. They could give you, I think, up to a month in jail, some kind of term. But from what I've read and from the folks that I've talked to, none of that's going to happen. So you ask yourself, what's the point? Yeah, what is the point? What's the point of going to all that trouble? Well, you got to politically say you did something. Well, we put this ordinance in place, and as a result, we haven't enforced it at all. And we're not putting anybody in jail. We're not even fining anybody. So then you might ask us, what was the point? And we'd have to say, well, it's something good to talk about there for a while. We could focus on that instead of the actual problem, which is you got a lot of whacked out people with mental issues on drugs throughout Portland, and it's dragging the city down. So the political will, if the political will isn't there, then good luck. You got nothing. And that's kind of where I see San Fran sit for a large portion of what they're talking about. You've got London Breed, and I keep talking about London Breed because she is the face of, hey, we're going to get this done. And a lot of you out there are saying, hey, don't think she's doing anything. All right, time will tell, right? Because I keep pointing at, okay, here is what she is saying. Here is what she is saying they're going to do, meaning her and the police. Are a lot of those things to get the APEC conference, into town, which is November the 14th? They got to polish the turd a little bit and clean things up in San Fran to kind of get things going. Portland, I think, is past that. The downtown core is past that. So, all we're doing is really just talking about, hey, we got to work on this homelessness problem. Because invariably, it's the unfettered open air drug use and homelessness and crime that everybody is talking about. And those will be very, very big factors in the upcoming next election. They just will. People will talk about that. They will point to those things. And folks that are in the Portland, you got your Portland Mayor Ted, he's going to be able to point to, well, we put this and we enacted this, but it's just, we need some more time for this to really settle in and take effect. Nothing's going to take effect if you don't enforce it. And so, so much of this you can't arrest your way out of because you don't have the resources to do that. You don't either have the public defenders. I mean, we've got situations where court cases are just being, dismissed because you don't have public defenders. That's going on in a lot of communities. Nobody wants to be a public defender. Nobody wants to be a cop. Nobody wants to work in the judicial system because it sucks. And because you've allowed so much of this crime to just happen. And so, getting that back together, getting some kind of cohesive, system to dealing with that, good luck. So that's where I kind of see a San Francisco, even though you've got London Breed saying she's going to do all this stuff. I think she will do some stuff. And by that, I mean, she will have some impact on some very concentrated areas, but the Tenderloin in general, good luck cleaning that bad boy up, right? I mean, it's just geographically so big, 55 square blocks, I think it is. I mean, good luck. You're not talking 600 people. You're talking thousands and thousands of people. And a lot of those, areas in the Tenderloin are single room occupancy, so you're dealing with some real stuff going on that you can't fix overnight. Even if you sweep it out, that element is going to go elsewhere, and they're just going to set up shop, set up camp, and do their thing once again. So until there's enforcement, until you've got more in the way of prosecutors that actually want to prosecute, district attorneys that are willing to drop the hammer, you can have a mayor like London Breed kind of pointing at stuff. And I think a lot of what she is doing is specific things that she can kind of showboat and see what's going on. She will accomplish some of those things. But the overall picture is such that I think most folks, and myself, unfortunately included, would say the overall impact is less than desirable. It's not really going to fix a ton, right? It's not going to fix a ton. You need a Rudy Giuliani in there, right? Just go in there and just kick ass. We need Snake Plissken. Just get in there and I can fix this. What was that Sylvester Stallone movie where, what was the name of that movie? Where he was a cop coming back from the past. Yeah, he got moved into the future. Yeah. Well, we need him in there. Just solve it. Just fix it. Just fix it, Sly. Whatever you got to do. These are issues that aren't being fixed on the daily, even though we've got these big news, these media stories. Here's what Phoenix did that nobody else can seem to work out how to make this happen. Well, you shifted some folks around. Congrats. Well done. Because the zone will be back. Might not be back right at the zone, but that zone, it's going elsewhere. Yeah, you still just got to deal with it. So for all of you enjoying your new zone occupants, yeah, how's that working out? Yeah. All right, that's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.